Hi, welcome to week 2. It's going to be a long semester, but today I want to talk over what we're going to do this semester. Especially, I'm going to look at the development plan. This week is about planning, how important it is, and why we're focusing on it. Today, on this video, I'm going to talk you through the exact details of what you need to include in your development plan for your final in this class. The reason I'm doing that is because I would like your development plan to be useful to you immediately in the nonprofit setting. So let's look at the big picture briefly. Why development plan? Well, development plans can be used in the real world. Real nonprofits use these development plans that are basically formatted exactly like what you'll be doing for this class. So that's always a benefit. You can actually use it. And I encourage you to actually use this development plan and the process of creating this development plan to help your nonprofit create a more sustainable fundraising operation if you're in a nonprofit at this time. If you're not, hey, pretend that you're starting a nonprofit and figure out exactly how you would run a development plan to support that nonprofit. It keeps you focused. Development plans keep you focused on the most effective strategies. Oftentimes, things that people rely on the heaviest are grants and events that take up a lot of time and aren't necessarily that effective. Development plans are an opportunity to also try other things and see if there are more effective strategies. Keep your mind in the big game and not get so distracted in the weeds, in the holes, so you can actually see how your fundraising operation is working together. And they're crucial for having a successful year after year fundraising nonprofit, really. This week, I need you to also think about what nonprofit you're going to use. It doesn't have to be a real nonprofit. If you're not working in one right now, don't use a real nonprofit. Invent one. Say, what do I want to help? Maybe you want to start a nonprofit that helps people repair bicycles, or you want to start a nonprofit that helps people experiencing homelessness to find jobs. Whatever your nonprofit that you want to get involved with, use that and pick one soon, in this week or in the next couple of weeks, and just focus on that one, because it will make it easier in the long run if you're doing all of your work for one nonprofit. Because as you'll see, each of the classes, each of the assignments builds up to the final development plan. So if you're doing each of these on the same nonprofit, the final development plan should be fairly easy to write. So the development plan process, and by that I mean the process in this class, is going to look like this. First, we'll have an assignment where you turn in a language guide. Then we'll have an assignment where you turn in a donor list, the beginnings of a donor list. Then we'll have an assignment where you turn in budgets and goals. Then we'll have an assignment where you turn in find a foundation. This foundation is one that you will actually be able to use in your nonprofit if you're in one right now, or in whatever nonprofit you want to start. This foundation will also be able to be a foundation that you list in your final assignment, in your final development plan that you will turn in on the last day of this class. You'll want to have a couple of foundations in that assignment, so this is a good place to start in that. Email solicitation will help you think about how you would use email to raise money for your nonprofit. Then you'll turn in a draft. I'll go over that draft. Your peers will go over that draft. You'll get feedback about that draft before you turn in a final draft, and then I'll give you more feedback. So this could be potentially, with all this work that you're doing toward it, could be a very good development plan. In other words, it could be one that you can either change to use in a real nonprofit, or if you're focusing on it right now and getting feedback from people within the nonprofit, you could be using it in a nonprofit on December 16th, the second that you get that final draft complete. You could be presenting it to your board and using it for next year. For the next fiscal year. That's the goal of this class, is to get you something you can use in the real world. The first section of your development plan will be the language guide. That's an introduction to your organization. A language guide is about repetition, repetition, repetition. You want everybody in the organization speaking the same language about that organization, so that if a potential donor speaks to 4 different people from that organization, they all say basically the same thing using the same words. because that's how you get your message across to the potential donor, right? It's a way to effectively communicate the same message from all the parts of an organization. What it is you actually take phrases and paragraphs and you write them out. And you put these phrases and paragraphs in all of your official communications. Any email that's going out from the executive director to all the staff, from the executive director or from another staff member to all the donors, to anything. You use language, you'll use at least some of the language in this language guide. So this is the language that gets repeated. So when people are out, they just naturally pick up on the language that we've developed for this language guide. It's an effective way to make the entire organization part of the financial, the fundraising strategy. The next page is going to be on the budgets and goals. If you have a real budget, that's great. If you don't, what you need to know, what you need to think about is how much your nonprofit would spend on services, different types of services, and how much they'll spend on administrative tasks. It's harder to raise money for just the general pot, for the general administrative tasks, than it is for particular services. So when you're writing your goals, you need to know how much of your goals are going to fit into what pot. So if you're writing a grant, that grant is probably going to be for a specific service, and it'll say 10% of this grant will go to overhead. You need to reflect that in the budget. 10% of the grant will go to overhead, 90% will go to specific services, etc. If you're talking to a donor, you're going to say, well, your money that you're donating today is going to go to rebuilding the computer lab, right? That money needs to go to the computer lab, which means you need to know that you're not you're raising too much money for that computer lab. You need to raise the right amount of money for that computer lab. So you need to know a little bit about the budget, but mostly you need to know your goals. How much you're going to get from emails. What's your goal on email solicitation? What's your goal on events? How much are you going to get from events? How much are you going to get from grants? How much are you going to get from big donors? How much are you going to get from mobile apps? How much are you going to get from grassroots fundraising? The grassroots fundraising looks a little different because it's not going to be cash money. It's going to be in-kind services, computers, maybe linking up one volunteer with another volunteer so that they can exchange services. The next half a page to one page is going to be about how you're going to manage all the information that you get. How are you going to manage all the donors? How are you going to manage all the grantors? They need to all be in one database somehow. So you specify, is this going to be in Excel? Is it going to be in Access? Is it going to be on a professional database software? Is it going to be kept in a certain location? How you'll handle callbacks. If somebody says, I can't do it right now, but call me back in 3 months. How are you going to make sure that gets done, even if the entire organization, everybody in the organization changes hands in those 3 months? How is the new person who's filling that role going to make sure that the callbacks get made on the right time? Or try again next year. That's even harder, right? How are you going to handle a do not call? Some people say, don't call me again. They might be donors who donate on a regular basis, but they'll still say, don't call again, because they just don't want the phone calls. If you call again, you'll lose that donation. How are you going to make sure you don't lose the donation from someone who doesn't want you to call? Most people are fine with it. In nonprofit experience, people are fine with you calling, but every once in a while, you'll get someone who donates thousands of dollars and doesn't want to be called. How are you going to negotiate referrals, right? So you call Nancy, and Nancy says, call my friend Jerry, and you need to know, first of all, you need to be able to document, hey, Jerry, what's his phone number? How am I going to get to him? Secondly, you need to be able to say, Jerry, hey, Jerry, Nancy referred me to you. And that could be a week down the road or 2 weeks down the road. So you need to have it in his notes, Nancy referred me to you. And then you need to be able to call back Nancy and say, look, Jerry didn't give us anything. I wonder if you might be able to have a word with him. She might do it. And general notes, things like that. That all needs to be accounted for in a half a page to a page of your development plan. Then you need to have 5 strategies, at least 5 strategies. That means things like your 2 main strategies, which are often things like events, grants, or major donors. Sometimes earned income or fee for service, depending on the nonprofit. And by earned income, I mean if you give them a service and you take money for that service. So if you're in a theater, all the tickets that you sell to the nonprofit theater, they're all earned income, right? They're not going to be the same sort of fundraising as when you call somebody to ask for a donation to the theater or to a place, food bank, right? there's going to be two strategies probably. If it's a solid nonprofit, you'll have at least two strategies that are already in place by the time you walk in. Those two strategies are going to be the meat and potatoes. They're going to be how they earn their money every day. For an existing nonprofit, oftentimes they spend too much time on those two strategies. Sometimes they underemphasize them, right? But generally, they spend too much time on those two strategies. If there's only one strategy, you're in trouble. Because what if the economy crashes? As in 2009, a third of all nonprofits shut their doors between 2009 and 2011. That happened because the economy crashed and there weren't individual donors or donors from businesses. Individual donors and businesses stopped donating. So governments did pick up some of that slack in grants, but a lot of organizations, nonprofits, did not have a good grant writer, didn't have a good way of raising funds from government grants. So how do you make sure that you've got at least two, hopefully, and as many as three primary sources of income that you can rely on the day-to-day? You want to make sure not to overemphasize, but also you need to make sure that you've thought them through. If you can alleviate some time from those two main donors to try out new things, that's great. If you can't, as long as they're fully thought through. If you are not spending enough time on the two main ways of raising money, though, you're in trouble. So those will take about 3 pages, right? 2 to 3 pages. And then you're going to spend another 2 to 3 pages on 3 more strategies that are more experimental, if you will. They're not secondary exactly, but they are alternative. They're things you're trying out, seeing if we can raise money through mobile apps, social media, email, websites, grassroots fundraising, some other method. Benevon is one that we'll be introduced to a little later. Just try out these other strategies and see if they work. Maybe you don't have a good grant writing program, so you start writing grants on a regular basis to try and earn them. So nonprofit fundraising is always shifting, and you need to be able to account for that. You need to be able to try out new stuff so that if you suddenly lose individual donors, you can make up for it using web apps or a YouTube campaign. A new fundraising strategy takes at least 2 years and sometimes as long as 5 years to cultivate. Cultivate. Sorry about that. Cultivate. So you don't just do it for 1 year. If you try something, you have to try it for 2 to 3 years, because you don't know if it's going to work in 1 year. It's the repetition that matters. So, and we already talked about grassroots development, but we'll talk more about that later. Then you have a page. Could be a half a page on the big picture. If you go back to the big picture, you use language from the language guide. You talk about how you're going to avoid ethical pitfalls. We'll talk more about that in the next 2 weeks. You talk about how this plan contributes to the mission. Maybe instead of, if you're doing a fun run, you have people experiencing homelessness who are your clients participate in the fun run. They run for their health and because that gives you an opportunity to introduce them to people who might be able to give them jobs. Right? So you're actually serving a secondary purpose. Maybe the training. Maybe you have a whole training event that keeps people experiencing homelessness focused on that, especially if they're also suffering from addiction. This training to get to a 5K fun run might help with their treatment. Right? So there's other ways that fundraising can actually contribute to the mission. It's always good to think about those, and the conclusion's a good place to do that. How much of this plan can be carried out by volunteers, right? How much of this plan can you just hand a phone to someone and say, call all these people? And how much do you have to do yourself? How much does the executive director have to do? How much does a board member have to do, or an ambassador of some kind, right? A wealthy person who just wants to help raise money is an ambassador. Sometimes they're board members, but oftentimes they're not. And what needs to happen to make the plan sustainable year after year? How are you going to hand this off in case you quit? Right? If you're no longer the executive director or the finance director, how are you going to hand this off to the next person? What sort of strategies are you going to take to do that? Or where's the document going to be located that will help with that? The format needs to be professional. It needs to be a title with a header page. That's not counting toward your page limits. So you can go 11 pages, including a title with a header page. Know your audience. You'll be presenting to a nonprofit board. So these are rich, wealthy, usually white, often not white people, but nonprofit boards, we know from the literature and the research, are overwhelmingly white, wealthy men. 1-inch margins, 12-point standard font, double-spaced clear citations, and professional writing style, right? So use the writing center and your peers as necessary. Next steps. What's next? Discussion of the fundraiser's role in a nonprofit is what we're going to do this week. When you're doing your discussion on the discussion board, use at least one citation. It doesn't have to be a proper citation. Just say, in the chapter on page 12, they mentioned that blah, and I agree with that statement. That's the sort of thing I need to see in your discussion to get full points this week. Okay. Deadlines. Normally our deadlines are Monday nights because I'm not available on the weekends, or I'm kind of available on the weekends. But this time it's going to be Tuesday night because of Labor Day next week on September the 4th or 5th or something like that. So it's going to be Tuesday night this week instead of Monday night. No big changes. I just want to let you know that you have till Tuesday for your deadline on the discussion board. Next two modules, we'll be talking about fundraising ethics. What does it mean to be an ethical fundraiser? What does it mean to support the mission? Sometimes some fundraising efforts have hurt missions, and we'll talk a little about that in the next couple of weeks. I find that talking about nonprofit fundraising ethics helps fundraisers to feel confident that what they're doing is providing a genuine service for people who have money or other resources and want to have an impact. Give that money and other resources to a nonprofit who is having an impact, right? This is an important service for society, especially in a society like ours that's decided to give so much of our social welfare through nonprofits. We need fundraisers. It's necessary. But you call someone like, why are you calling me? Blah, blah, blah. That does happen, you know. You're asking for money and people get irritated with that. But if you know that what you're doing is ethical by actually exploring the ethics of fundraising, I find that you can raise money more easily. Thanks a lot and have a great week. Please ask any questions that you have of me. Call me at 970-236-6311. Email me or join me on my Zoom hours from 11 to 1 Monday and Wednesday. That's 11 to 1 Monday to Wednesday. I'm on Zoom. You can get to the link using your syllabus as the link. And then the other place you can get the link is on this Canvas page where you're watching this video. Thanks a lot.